Hey kid, you okay out here all alone? The question hung in the humid Atlanta air as the celebrated black track champion, a woman forged in resilience, paused her run in Piedmont Park. Beneath a sprawling oak, a small white boy, no older than 8, sat with his knees drawn up, silent tears staining his cheeks. His solitude struck her heart. She'd faced her battles, scorn for her skin, whispers of, she's only here for quotas, and relentless pressure to prove her worth. Yet something about this boy's quiet pain stirred her. What secret was he hiding? Could she help him find hope? Stick around to uncover a story of courage and connection that'll leave you inspired. Subscribe to our channel for the latest videos and drop a comment sharing where you're watching from. Let's see how far this tale travels. The late afternoon sun draped Piedmont Park in a golden haze, its rays filtering through the gnarled branches of ancient oaks. Brenda Carter's sneakers pounded the gravel trail, each step a metronome syncing with her steady breaths. At 32, the track star, her name synonymous with grit and gold medals, had returned to Atlanta to reclaim her rhythm after a restorative retreat. Her dark skin glistened with sweat, muscles taut from years of outrunning doubt and defying odds. The park, with its sprawling lawns and whispering trees, was her sanctuary, a place to shed the weight of expectations. Yet today, as she rounded a bend, her stride faltered. Beneath a towering oak, a small figure huddled, a boy no older than 8, his pale face streaked with tears. Brenda slowed, her pulse quickening not from exertion but from instinct. The boy sat alone, knees drawn tight, his sandy hair falling over eyes that glistened with unspoken sorrow. His faded blue t-shirt hung loosely on his thin frame, and his sneakers, scuffed and fraying, bore the wear of too many ungentle days. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge the joggers or dog walkers passing by. His solitude was a wall, and Brenda, no stranger to barriers, felt a tug at her heart. She'd faced sneers for her ambition, whispers that her victories were flukes, and the sting of being judged before she even laced up her shoes. This boy's quiet grief mirrored a pain she knew too well. She approached cautiously, her shadow falling across the grass. "Hey, mind if I stretch here?" she asked, her voice warm but soft, like a hand extended in peace. The boy flinched, his shoulders hunching further. He mumbled, "I'm Kevin," then fell silent, his gaze fixed on the ground. Brenda knelt, pretending to adjust her shoelaces, giving him space to breathe. His wariness reminded her of herself at 16, standing in her Memphis backyard, her mother's voice sharp. "You gotta be twice as good to get half as far." She'd carried that lesson through every race, every slight, and now it urged her to stay. Brenda settled on the grass a few feet away, stretching her hamstrings while stealing glances at Kevin. His hands twisted nervously, and his eyes darted as if expecting someone to emerge from the park's edges. The air held the scent of cut grass and distant barbecue. But beneath it, Brenda sensed his fear, sharp and raw. She tried again. "Do you like to run? Bet you're fast." Kevin shook his head, barely audible. "Not really." His voice was a whisper, fragile as a dry leaf. Brenda nodded, unfazed, and shared a sip from her water bottle, leaving it within his reach. He didn't take it, but his shoulders eased a fraction. As she rose to resume her run, a woman's voice cut through the park's hum. Karen, a middle-aged jogger with a tight blonde ponytail, leaned toward her friend, her words sharp enough to carry. "She should stick to her lane, always meddling where she doesn't belong." The jab wasn't subtle, and Brenda's jaw tightened. She'd heard worse. Coaches who doubted her, reporters who questioned her attitude. Karen's glance at Kevin made it clear. A black woman talking to a white boy was, to her, an intrusion. Brenda met Karen's eyes briefly, her gaze steady, then turned back to Kevin, offering him a smile. "See you tomorrow, okay?" He nodded almost imperceptibly, and she jogged off, her heart heavy but resolute. That evening, in her sleek Atlanta apartment, Brenda sat by the window, the city's skyline glittering beyond. Her walls bore framed medals and photos of triumphant finishes, but her mind lingered on Kevin. His tears weren't the fleeting kind, born of a scraped knee or a lost toy. They carried a weight she recognized, the type etched by something deeper, something wrong. She sipped chamomile tea, her thoughts drifting to her childhood. Her mother's voice echoed again, not the encouraging words of later years, but the early cutting ones. Don't embarrass us. You're not like them. Them, the kids who didn't have to prove their place. Brenda had fought to belong, and now she couldn't shake the feeling that Kevin was fighting too, against a shadow she couldn't yet name. The next day, Brenda returned to the park, her running gear swapped for a lighter pace, her eyes scanning for Kevin. He was there, under the same oak, his posture unchanged, as if the world hadn't moved since yesterday. She waved, keeping her distance, and jogged a slow lap, giving him time to adjust to her presence. When she circled back, she sat closer, tossing a small rubber ball between her hands. "Ever play catch?" she asked. Kevin shrugged but watched the ball, his curiosity flickering. She tossed it gently. He caught it, hesitant, then threw it back. It was a start. Over the next few days, Brenda wove herself into Kevin's afternoons. She'd jog, then pause near his tree, sharing small stories, how she tripped in her first big race, how she learned to love the burn of a sprint. Kevin listened, rarely speaking, but his eyes followed her, less guarded each time. She noticed his habits, the way he clutched his backpack, the way he scanned the park's exits. His fear was a living thing, and Brenda's resolve grew. She couldn't walk away, not when every instinct screamed that this boy needed someone to see him. On the fifth day, as Brenda stretched nearby, Karen's voice slithered through again, this time to a park ranger. "It's odd, don't you think? She's always hovering around that kid." The ranger, a burly man with a kind face, dismissed her with a wave. "She's just being friendly." Brenda's fist clenched, but she exhaled, focusing on Kevin. She'd faced enough Karens to know their words were noise, not truth. Still, the sting lingered, a reminder of the world's quick judgments. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of peach and violet, Brenda stood, brushing grass from her leggings. "Gotta head out, Kevin. You good?" He nodded, his lips twitching in what might have been a smile. She jogged off, her mind racing. Kevin's pain wasn't her story to write, but she couldn't ignore it. That night, she pulled out her phone, scrolling to the contact for Laura Hayes, her old friend and a detective with a knack for cutting through red tape. "Laura," she said when the call connected, "I need your help. There's a kid in trouble and I can't look the other way." The line crackled with possibility, and Brenda knew, as the city hummed beyond her window, that this was only the beginning, a step toward a future where she and Kevin might find something neither had expected, a chance to heal together. The Piedmont Park trails buzzed with evening life, cyclists weaving through, children shrieking in distant games of tag, but Brenda Carter's focus narrowed to the oak-shaded patch where Kevin sat. His small frame, hunched as ever, seemed to melt into the grass, his faded jeans and worn sneakers blending with the earth. Brenda, her track gear damp from a light jog, felt a quiet resolve settle in her bones. She'd spent days earning slivers of Kevin's trust, each nod or fleeting glance a victory. Now as the sky burned orange, she aimed to deepen that fragile bond, sensing the weight of whatever he carried was more than a child's fleeting sorrow. Brenda approached with a casual stride, a frisbee tucked under her arm, a prop to ease the tension. "Hey, Kevin, up for a toss?" she called, her voice bright but measured. He looked up, his blue eyes wary, but a flicker of interest crossed his face. He shrugged, rising slowly, brushing dirt from his palms. Brenda tossed the frisbee gently, and Kevin caught it, his movements hesitant but precise. They played in silence at first, the disc sailing in lazy arcs, the park's hum fading into a backdrop. Brenda seized the moment to weave in a story. "You know, I once fumbled a baton in a relay race. Thought I'd die of shame, but my team just laughed it off." Kevin's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. As they tossed the frisbee, Brenda noticed Kevin's backpack, slung carelessly beside the tree. Its zipper gaped, revealing a glint of metal, a small dented tin box, its edges rusted, adorned with faded superhero stickers. Her pulse quickened. Something about it felt significant, like a key to his guarded world. She didn't press, instead offering him a sip from her water bottle, which he accepted this time, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The gesture, small as it was, felt like progress. Brenda sat cross-legged on the grass, keeping the mood light. Ever think about running track? You've got quick hands. Bet you'd smoke the competition. Kevin shook his head, but his posture softened, his shoulders no longer a tight knot. Then a misstep changed everything. Kevin, chasing a wild toss, stumbled, and his backpack tipped over. The tin box slid out, popping open on impact. Brenda's breath caught as she glimpsed its contents. A scattering of loose ibuprofen pills, a broken plastic car missing a wheel, and a crumpled scrap of paper, its edges frayed. Kevin scrambled to the box, his face pale, hands trembling as he shoved the items back inside. "It's nothing!" he snapped, his voice high and brittle. Brenda raised her hands, palms out, her tone soothing. "Hey, no worries, just an accident." But her mind raced. Pills and a note in a child's secret stash spelled trouble deeper than she'd feared. Kevin clutched the box to his chest, his eyes darting as if expecting a threat to emerge from the park's shadows. Brenda's heart ached. She'd seen that look before, in teammates haunted by pressures no one else saw. She wanted to ask about the box, to pry gently, but his panic held her back. Instead, she shifted tactics, tossing the frisbee again. "Nice catch earlier. You're a natural." Kevin relaxed slightly, but the box stayed tucked under his arm, a silent barrier. Brenda knew she'd seen enough to act, but she needed more than a glimpse to understand his truth. As they played, an older man, Tom, a park groundskeeper with a grizzled beard, paused his raking nearby. He eyed Brenda, then Kevin, his expression tightening. "You be careful, miss," he said, his voice low. "Folks might get the wrong idea, you hanging around a kid like him." The words landed like a slap, their subtext clear. A black woman with a white boy invited scrutiny. Brenda's jaw clenched, but she forced a nod, her eyes never leaving Kevin. She'd endured enough sidelong glances in her career. Reporters who called her aggressive for speaking up. Sponsors who hesitated to back her. To know how to swallow the slight. Tom shuffled off, but his words lingered, a reminder of the world's sharp edges. That night in her apartment's quiet glow, Brenda paced, her bare feet soft against the hardwood. The city's skyline sparkled beyond her window, but her thoughts were with Kevin's box. The pills could be harmless, a child's odd collection, but the note, its presence gnawed at her. She sank onto the couch, her mind drifting to a memory from her teens. She'd stood in her Memphis kitchen, her mother's voice slicing through. "You think you're special? They'll tear you down the second you slip." The sting of being doubted, of being seen as less, had fueled Brenda's drive. Now it pushed her to protect Kevin, to shield him from whatever haunted his young eyes. She replayed their interactions, searching for clues. Kevin's reluctance to talk about home, his constant scanning of the park, signs of fear, not shyness. The box was a piece of his puzzle, but she needed context. Sitting at her kitchen counter, Brenda sipped coffee, its bitterness grounding her. She thought of her childhood secrets, hiding tears after a coach's harsh words, pretending all was well. Kevin's silence felt heavier, laced with something darker. She couldn't rush him. Trust took time, but time might not be on his side. The next evening, Brenda returned to the park, the air thick with summer's end. Kevin was there, under his oak, the box nowhere in sight, but his backpack zipped tight. She brought a small rubber ball, tossing it lightly. "Want to play?" she asked, and Kevin joined her, his movements less guarded. As they bounced the ball, Brenda shared another story, how she'd choked in her first national race, her nerves betraying her. "Point is, messing up doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Kevin nodded, his eyes meeting hers for a moment longer than usual. He didn't mention home, but he admitted, "I like it here. It's quiet." The word carried weight, a hint of what he sought beneath that tree. Their game was interrupted by a jogger's careless sprint, nearly knocking Kevin over. His backpack slid, and Brenda caught a glimpse of the box again, tucked deep inside. She didn't comment, but her resolve hardened. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows, she said, "I'm here tomorrow, Kevin. You know that, right?" He nodded, his fingers tightening on his bag. Brenda jogged home, her mind made up. She dialed Laura Hayes, her detective friend, her voice steady. Laura, I saw something today. A kid's hiding pills and a note. I need to know what's going on with him. Laura's response was swift. Give me a name. I'll dig. Brenda hung up, staring at the city's lights, knowing she'd crossed a threshold. Kevin's secret was unraveling, and she'd be there when it did, ready to catch him if he fell. The air in Piedmont Park hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, the evening light softening the edges of the world. Brenda Carter's sneakers crunched against the gravel as she jogged toward the familiar oak, her heart a steady drumbeat of purpose. She'd spent days weaving a fragile thread of trust with Kevin, the 8-year-old whose silent tears had become her compass. The tin box, its pills and cryptic note, haunted her thoughts, a puzzle demanding answers. Brenda, her track-honed body taut with resolve, knew she was close to uncovering the truth behind Kevin's fear, but the path required care, each step measured to avoid shattering the boy's fragile defenses. Under the oak, Kevin sat, his knees drawn up, his pale face half hidden by his sandy hair. His backpack rested beside him, zipped tight, as if guarding its secrets. Brenda slowed her pace, offering a wave. Hey, Kevin, ready for a quick race? She asked, her tone light but her eyes scanning for clues. He shrugged, but a faint spark lit his gaze, and he rose, brushing grass from his jeans. They jogged a short loop, Brenda matching his hesitant strides, her voice weaving a story of a race where she'd fallen, but still finished. Sometimes you just keep going, no matter how hard it feels, she said, watching him closely. Kevin nodded, his breath uneven, but he stayed silent about his burdens. As they returned to the tree, Brenda noticed a faint bruise on Kevin's forearm, its purple edge peeking from his sleeve. Her stomach twisted. She'd seen enough injuries in her career to know this wasn't from a playground tumble. You okay there? She asked, nodding toward his arm. Kevin yanked his sleeve down, his voice sharp. I fell. It's nothing. The lie hung between them, brittle as glass. Brenda didn't push, but her mind raced, connecting the bruise to the box's contents. She sat on the grass, tossing a small stone between her hands, giving him space to breathe. You ever feel like talking about stuff? I'm here, she said, her words an open door. Kevin looked away, his fingers digging into the dirt. That morning, Brenda had met Laura Hayes at a coffee shop, the detective's sharp eyes narrowing as she shared her findings. Michael Dunn, Kevin's father, had a rap sheet, DUIs, a dropped domestic violence charge, and a restraining order from an ex-wife who'd vanished years ago. He's trouble, Brenda, Laura had warned, her voice low, but we need more than suspicions to move. The news had settled like a stone in Brenda's chest, fueling her determination. Now, watching Kevin's guarded movements, she saw the truth in his flinches, his constant vigilance. He wasn't just sad, he was scared, trapped in a world she was beginning to understand. Brenda shifted tactics, pulling a granola bar from her pocket and splitting it in half. Fuel for champions, she said, handing him a piece. Kevin took it, nibbling slowly, and for a moment, the park's hum, distant laughter, the rustle of leaves, felt almost normal. She seized the opening, her voice gentle but deliberate. You know, when I was your age, I used to hide how scared I was. Felt like nobody'd get it. But talking helped, even just a little. Kevin's eyes met hers, a flicker of something, trust maybe, before he looked down. My dad, he gets mad, he mumbled, barely audible. Says I'm why my mom left. The words landed like a blow, and Brenda's heart clenched. She kept her face calm, nodding. That's a heavy thing to carry. You don't deserve that. As they sat, a woman, Susan, a regular at the park with a sharp bob and sharper tongue, passed by, her toddler in tow. She glanced at Brenda and Kevin, then leaned toward the park manager, her voice carrying. It's strange, her always with that boy. Doesn't she have races to win? The manager, a wiry man with a tired smile, waved her off, but the barbs stung. Brenda felt the familiar weight of being watched, judged, her success always tempered by whispers that she didn't belong. She'd faced it in stadiums, in boardrooms, her every move dissected, but she pushed the thought aside, her focus on Kevin. Ignore folks like that, she said softly. They don't know us. Kevin's admission had cracked a door, and Brenda nudged it wider. You don't have to tell me everything, but if something's wrong, I can help. He hesitated, then reached into his backpack, pulling out the tin box. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing the note she'd glimpsed before. He didn't unfold it, but his voice shook. It's from my dad. Says if I tell, I'll lose him forever. Brenda's blood ran cold. The threat was no childish scribble, but a chain binding Kevin to silence. She kept her voice steady. You're brave for showing me that. Nobody should scare you like that. Kevin snapped the box shut, his eyes wide, as if he'd said too much. The moment was interrupted by a jogger's dog, a yapping terrier darting past. Kevin flinched, his body tensing, and Brenda saw it again, the fear that lived in his bones. She stood, brushing grass from her leggings, and offered a hand. Come on, let's walk a bit. They circled the oak, her presence a quiet shield. As they moved, Brenda's mind churned. The bruise, the note, Michael's history, it painted a grim picture. She couldn't wait any longer. Kevin needed safety, not just kindness. That night, Brenda sat at her kitchen table, the city's glow filtering through her blinds. She replayed Kevin's words, his confession a weight she couldn't shake. Her past flickered, a coach's sneer when she dared to dream big, the sting of being called too much for her fire. She'd fought to prove them wrong, and now she'd fight for Kevin. She dialed Laura, her voice firm. It's worse than we thought. He's got bruises and his dad's threatening him. We need to check his home now. Laura's response was immediate. I'll get CPS involved. We'll need a court order, but I'm on it. As Brenda hung up, she stared at the medals on her wall, their gleam a reminder of battles won. Kevin's battle was just beginning, and she'd be there, her strength not in her speed, but in her refusal to look away. The park's oak loomed in her mind, a sentinel over a boy who deserved more than fear. She'd seen the note's shadow, felt the bruise's truth. Whatever came next, Brenda knew one thing. She was all in, ready to run this race for Kevin, no matter the cost. The dusk settled over Piedmont Park like a heavy curtain, the air thick with the threat of rain. Brenda Carter's sneakers hit the trail with urgency, her breath sharp as she scanned the oak where Kevin usually sat. His absence was a jolt. His confession about his father's threats and the bruise on his arm had lit a fuse in her. She'd spent the morning with Laura Hayes, finalizing plans for a welfare check on Kevin's home. But now, as the park's shadows lengthened, a gnawing dread replaced her resolve. Brenda, her track star instincts honed for precision, sensed the fragile thread of trust she'd woven with the boy was at risk of snapping. Her phone buzzed, shattering the park's quiet hum. Laura's voice crackled through, taut with alarm. Brenda, Kevin's teacher just called. His dad picked him up early from school. They're gone. The words hit like a sprinter's block, and Brenda's heart lurched. Michael Dunn, Kevin's father, had sensed the noose tightening. Her questions, Kevin's slip about the note. She gripped the phone, her voice low. Where would he take him? Laura was already moving. We're checking his haunts. Meet me at the station. Now. Brenda sprinted to her car, the park blurring past. Joggers, dogs, the oak's silent watch. All irrelevant. Her mind raced, replaying Kevin's fear, his trembling hands clutching that tin box. She'd faced her battles, crowds doubting her, sponsors hesitating over her image. But this was different. Kevin was running out of time, and she'd be damned if she let him slip away. At the police station, a squat brick building buzzing with radios, Laura met her, her dark eyes grim. We've got a lead. CCTV from a gas station near Michael's place. He's driving a beat-up Chevy, headed north. Brenda's jaw tightened. I'm coming with you. Laura hesitated, her badge glinting under fluorescent lights. You're not trained for this. Brenda's gaze didn't waver. He trusts me. I'm not sitting this out. Laura nodded, and they joined a tactical team, piling into unmarked cars. The city streaked by, Atlanta's neon signs, its pulse of life, while Brenda's thoughts churned. She saw Kevin's flinch, his whispered admission about his father's rage. She'd promised to help, and now with Michael's desperation in play, that promise was her anchor. The lead took them to a derelict lot on the city's edge, a sprawl of cracked asphalt and rusted machinery. The Chevy sat abandoned, its driver's door ajar. Brenda's pulse thundered as she scanned the shadows, her athlete's instincts kicking in. Focus, assess, act. Laura's team fanned out, flashlights cutting through the dusk. A neighbor's tip had pointed them here, but the lot was a maze of debris. Brenda stayed close to Laura, her eyes darting for any sign of Kevin. Then a voice, harsh, slurred, echoed from behind a stack of pallets. "You think you can rat me out, boy?" Michael's rage was unmistakable. Brenda's blood ran cold, but she moved before thinking, her steps silent on the gravel. Laura signaled for backup, but Brenda crept closer, peering through a gap. There was Kevin crouched against a rusted barrel, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. Michael loomed over him, his frame unsteady, a bottle in one hand. Brenda's fist clenched. She'd faced intimidation, coaches who belittled her, reporters who twisted her words. But this was raw, ugly violence. She caught Laura's eye, mouthing, "He's there." Laura nodded, radioing for the team to close in. As they waited, a bystander, a wiry man in a trucker hat, lingering at the lot's edge, muttered to an officer. "Don't know why she's here," he said, nodding at Brenda. "This ain't her business." The officer ignored him, but the words stung, a reminder of the sidelong glances she'd endured her whole career. Brenda pushed it aside, her focus on Kevin. She'd run through worse than whispers to reach him. The team moved in, swift and silent, but Michael's head snapped up, sensing the trap. He grabbed Kevin's arm, yanking him toward a gap in the fence. Brenda acted on instinct, her sprinter's speed cutting through the chaos. "Kevin," she called, her voice sharp but steady. He turned, his eyes locking on hers, a flicker of hope breaking through his fear. Michael spun, cursing, but the team was faster. Officers tackled him, pinning him to the ground as he thrashed, his bottle shattering on the asphalt. Brenda reached Kevin, dropping to her knees beside him. He was shaking, his breath ragged, but unharmed. She pulled him close, her arms a shield. "You're safe now," she whispered, her voice fierce with relief. Kevin clung to her, his small hands gripping her jacket. The lot buzzed with activity, radios crackling, Michael's shouts fading as he was cuffed. Laura approached, her expression softening. "Good call, Brenda. He's okay because of you." Brenda nodded, her throat tight, still holding Kevin. She'd faced high-stakes races, the world watching, but this moment, Kevin's trembling trust, felt bigger than any podium. The bystander's voice cut through again, this time to another onlooker. "Her, saving that kid? Looks like a publicity stunt." Laura shot him a glare, and Brenda ignored it, her focus on Kevin's shallow breaths. She'd heard worse. Her victories called flukes, her motives questioned. None of it mattered now. As the team secured the scene, Brenda guided Kevin to a patrol car, her hand steady on his shoulder. He was silent, his eyes darting to where Michael was loaded into a van. "He won't hurt you anymore," Brenda said, kneeling to meet his gaze. Kevin nodded, but his fear lingered, a shadow she couldn't yet erase. Laura joined them, her notepad out. "CPS is on its way. We'll need his statement, but not tonight." Brenda's mind raced. She couldn't let Kevin face this alone. "Laura, I want to foster him, whatever it takes." Laura's brow arched, but she nodded. "It's a long road, but I'll back you." The drive back to the station was quiet. Kevin curled against Brenda in the back seat, his backpack clutched tight. She thought of her battles, nights spent proving her worth, defying those who saw her as less. Kevin's fight was different, but she'd run beside him, her strength not just in her legs, but in her refusal to let him fall. At the station, a CPS worker, Ms. Torres, took over, her voice gentle as she led Kevin to a quiet room. Brenda watched him go, her chest aching. She'd saved him from Michael, but the real race, earning his trust, building a future, was just beginning. As she stepped into the night, Atlanta's skyline glittering, Brenda knew she'd cross any finish line for Kevin, no matter how grueling the course. The Atlanta morning dawned soft, a veil of mist clinging to the streets as Brenda Carter navigated the quiet hum of the city. Her apartment, once a sleek haven of solitude, now felt incomplete without Kevin's hesitant presence. After the harrowing rescue from his father's grasp, Kevin had been placed in a temporary foster home, a modest brick house in a nearby suburb. Brenda, her track star discipline now channeled into a fiercer mission, visited daily, determined to mend the boy's fractured trust. His words, "You'll leave too," echoed in her mind, a challenge she met with unwavering resolve. The park's oak, their first meeting place, loomed in her memory, urging her to keep running this race for him. At the foster home, Brenda found Kevin in the living room, curled on a sagging couch, his sandy hair falling over eyes that carried too much weight for an 8-year-old. The room smelled of lavender and old wood, a stark contrast to the chaos he'd escaped. She knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "Hey, champ, how's it going?" Kevin shrugged, his gaze fixed on a frayed comic book, his fingers tracing its edges. His silence wasn't defiance, but fear, a wall built from years of betrayal. Brenda, no stranger to overcoming doubt, sat cross-legged on the floor, giving him space to breathe. She'd faced skeptics, coaches who saw only her color, crowds who cheered but never understood her fight, and she'd learned patience was a weapon. To ease the tension, Brenda pulled a deck of cards from her bag. "Ever play Go Fish?" she asked, shuffling with a flourish. Kevin's eyes flicked up, curious despite himself, and he nodded. They played the game, a quiet bridge over his reluctance. Between rounds, Brenda shared a story of a race where nerves nearly undid her voice warm with honesty. "I was shaking, but I ran anyway. Sometimes you just take one step." Kevin didn't respond, but his shoulders loosened, and he asked for another card, his voice a whisper. It was a start, and Brenda clung to it, her heart buoyed by the smallest signs of trust. Each day she returned, weaving herself into Kevin's routine. She joined his therapy sessions, sitting in the waiting room of a community center, its walls plastered with faded motivational posters. The therapist, a kind-eyed woman named Ms. Clara, spoke of Kevin's trauma. Nightmares, flinches at loud noises. Brenda listened, her resolve hardening. She invited Kevin to her training sessions at a local track, where the scent of rubber and sweat grounded her. At first he sat on the bleachers, clutching his backpack, but Brenda coaxed him to try a slow jog. "Just one lap," she said, jogging beside him, her pace deliberately unhurried. Kevin's sneakers scuffed the track, but his face lit with a fleeting grin, a spark of joy she hadn't seen before. One afternoon, as they stretched on the field, a coach, Mark, a grizzled veteran with a clipboard, muttered to a colleague nearby, "She's got talent, but playing mom to that kid? Probably just for the cameras." The words meant to be private carried on the breeze. Brenda's jaw tightened, the sting familiar. Her achievements often reduced to spectacle, her motives questioned. She'd heard it in press rooms, felt it in boardrooms where her presence was a novelty. But she flashed Kevin a smile, tossing him a water bottle. "Don't mind the noise," she said, her voice steady. "We're here for us." Kevin nodded, his trust in her a quiet defiance of the world's judgments. To build their bond, Brenda gifted Kevin a pair of running shoes, their bright blue laces a contrast to his worn pair. "For our next lap," she said, helping him tie them. His fingers fumbled, but he wore them proudly, a small step toward believing she'd stay. She shared more of her own story, sitting on the foster home's porch as crickets chirped. "When I was young, I thought I had to be perfect to be enough. Took me years to see I was enough just as me." Her words were for Kevin, a mirror to his struggle. He listened, then murmured, "I don't want to go back." The admission, raw and small, was a door creaking open. The memory of her battles surfaced one evening as Brenda drove home, the city's lights blurring past. She'd stood on a Memphis track at 17, her mother's voice sharp. "Don't let them think you're weak." The pressure to be flawless had nearly broken her, but she'd found strength in her flaws. Now she taught Kevin that same resilience, showing him he didn't need to hide his pain. At the track, she cheered as he ran a second lap, his strides surer, his face less shadowed. "You're killing it," she called, and his shy smile was a victory sweeter than any medal. Their progress wasn't seamless. Kevin's fear lingered, surfacing in moments of doubt. One day, as they tossed a frisbee in the foster home's yard, he stopped, his voice trembling. "What if you get tired of me?" Brenda knelt, meeting his gaze. "I'm in this for the long haul, Kevin. You're stuck with me." Her words, firm and warm, eased his tension, and he tossed the frisbee again, a tentative trust taking root. By week's end, a breakthrough came. Kevin, sitting on the porch, pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a drawing of them running together, stick figures under a bright sun. "For you," he said, his voice barely audible. Brenda's throat tightened. The sketch was more than art. It was proof he saw her as safe. She hugged him gently, mindful of his flinches. "This is going on my fridge," she said, her smile wide. As she left, she called Laura, her voice steady. "He's opening up. I'm ready to fight for him, whatever it takes." In her apartment, Brenda pinned the drawing to her fridge, its lines a beacon in the quiet. She'd run countless races, faced countless doubters, but Kevin's trust was a finish line unlike any other. The road ahead, fostering, healing, was daunting, but Brenda was no stranger to long races. She'd be there, step by step, for the boy who'd become her reason to keep going. The Atlanta skyline shimmered under a midday sun, its glass towers reflecting ambition and resilience, qualities Brenda Carter wore like her track medals. Months after rescuing Kevin from his father's grip, she stood at a crossroads, her heart tethered to the boy whose trust she'd earned through patience and presence. The foster home, with its creaking porch and lavender-scented rooms, had been a temporary refuge. But Brenda's fight now was for permanence. She navigated a labyrinth of legal hurdles, her sprinter's discipline fueling her pursuit to become Kevin's guardian. Today, as she drove to the courthouse, her hands steady on the wheel, she felt the weight of a new race, one not for gold, but for family. The courtroom was a sterile box, its wooden benches worn smooth by countless stories. Brenda sat beside Kevin, his small frame rigid in a borrowed button-up shirt, his blue eyes darting nervously. She squeezed his hand, her voice a soft anchor. "We're in this together, okay?" He nodded, clutching a folded drawing, a new one, of them under the park's oak. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, reviewed the case. Michael Dunn's conviction for abuse and kidnapping, his 15-year sentence, and the mother's relinquishment of rights. Brenda's application to foster and now adopt had faced scrutiny. A CPS worker, Linda, had questioned her in a meeting, her tone clipped. "You're a public figure, Ms. Carter. Can you balance fame with a child's needs?" The doubt, laced with an unspoken bias, echoed the skepticism Brenda had faced her whole career. Her victories diminished, her motives dissected. She'd answered with calm resolve, her commitment to Kevin unwavering. Linda's voice lingered as the judge spoke, outlining the adoption process. Brenda's jaw tightened, recalling the worker's insinuation that her race and status made her suspect. She'd heard it before. Journalists who called her flashy for her confidence, sponsors who hesitated to back a black woman with a voice. But Kevin's hand in hers grounded her, a reminder of why she fought. The judge's gavel fell, her words clear. "Ms. Carter, you are granted legal guardianship with adoption finalized." Kevin's shoulders sagged with relief, and Brenda pulled him close, her eyes stinging. Outside, under the courthouse's stone arches, she lifted him in a hug, his laughter a melody she'd never tire of. The victory was shadowed by whispers. A local article, slipped under her radar, surfaced online. "Track star adopts white child. Charity or stunt?" The headline, sharp as a starter's gun, cut deep. Brenda scrolled past it in her apartment, her fingers pausing over the comments, some praising, others sneering. She shut her laptop, focusing on Kevin, who was sprawled on her couch, sketching a rocket. The world's noise couldn't touch them here, not when his shy grin lit the room. She'd faced worse, stadiums where her name was mispronounced, galas where she was the only black face. Kevin was her focus, her family, and no headline could change that. Their new life demanded celebration, and the U.S. Track Championships offered the perfect stage. Brenda, competing for another title, trained with fierce purpose, her mornings spent sprinting, her evenings with Kevin, building model planes or tossing a ball in the park. The championship stadium buzzed with anticipation, its stands packed, the air electric with cheers. Brenda, in her sleek running gear, felt the familiar rush, but her eyes sought Kevin backstage, where he stood with a volunteer, clutching a handmade sign. "Run now, Brenda!" A nod to their shared moments. His proud grin, free of the fear that once defined him, was her true prize. As the race began, Brenda's legs churned, her focus razor sharp. The crowd roared, but she ran for Kevin, for the boy who'd called her Mom Brenda the night before, his voice tentative but real. She crossed the finish line, gold secured, and sprinted to the sidelines where Kevin waited. She scooped him up, their laughter mingling as cameras flashed. The moment was theirs, untainted by the skeptics. A coach who'd whispered she was distracted by Kevin, or fans who questioned her priorities. Brenda had always run against the wind, and now with Kevin's arms around her, she felt unstoppable. That evening, they celebrated at a diner, its neon sign casting a warm glow over checkered tables. Kevin, in a new t-shirt Brenda had bought, dipped fries in ketchup, his chatter about school a stark contrast to his once guarded silence. Brenda raised her soda glass, her voice thick. "To us, kiddo." Kevin clinked his milkshake against hers, his smile wide. "To Mom Brenda." The words, so simple, carried the weight of their journey, from the oak's shadow to this booth, where they were no longer runner and stray, but family, whole and fierce. Back home, Brenda tucked Kevin into bed, his room a cozy nook with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. He yawned, clutching a stuffed dog she'd given him. "Thanks for today," he mumbled, already half asleep. Brenda kissed his forehead, her heart full. She'd faced countless finish lines, each a battle against doubt. But this, Kevin's trust, his belonging, was her greatest triumph. In the quiet, she thought of the park, the oak where it all began. It stood as a sentinel, witnessing their start and now their future. As she closed his door, Brenda paused, her gaze falling on the drawing pinned to her fridge. Two stick figures, hand in hand. She'd run for herself, for her dreams, but now she ran for him, for the family they'd built against all odds. The world might whisper, might doubt, but Brenda Carter knew her truth. She and Kevin were home, and no race could ever top that. The Atlanta dawn painted the horizon in strokes of peach and gold, its light spilling into the cozy home Brenda Carter had made with Kevin. Their new life, stitched together from courtroom battles and quiet victories, hummed with the rhythm of belonging. The house, a modest haven with creaking floors and sunlit windows, smelled of coffee and fresh paint, a canvas for their shared dreams. Brenda, her track star fire now tempered by love, stood at the kitchen counter, slicing apples for Kevin's lunch. Her medals framed on the wall gleamed softly, but her true pride was the boy bounding down the stairs, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his grin bright as the morning. Kevin, now 9, had shed the haunted look that once clung to him. His sandy hair bounced as he grabbed a muffin, chattering about his latest science project, a model of Mars's volcanoes. Brenda listened, her heart swelling. She'd faced her skeptics, reporters who'd called her too bold, crowds who'd underestimated her drive. But Kevin's growth was a triumph no podium could match. "You'll blow them away at the science fair," she said, ruffling his hair. He beamed, his confidence a testament to the safety she'd built around him. Their mornings were a dance of rituals, Kevin assembling his project, Brenda lacing up for a jog. They often ran together, their strides syncing on a neighborhood trail, the air crisp with promise. Today, as they jogged, Brenda shared a plan. "I'm coaching a youth track team. Want to be my assistant?" Kevin's eyes lit up. "Can I time the sprints?" She laughed, nodding, her mind drifting to the oak in Piedmont Park, where their story began. That tree, a silent witness, had seen their first steps toward this life, and now they were sprinting toward a future neither had dared imagine. The science fair, held in a bustling school gym, was a kaleidoscope of posters and eager voices. Kevin's display, a meticulously crafted volcano with red-dyed lava, drew a crowd. Brenda stood nearby, her presence a quiet anchor as he explained his work to judges. His poise, once unthinkable, stirred a fierce pride in her. A parent, Paul, lingered at the edge, his voice low as he spoke to another dad. "Kid's sharp, but living with Carter. She's not exactly typical mom material." The jab, veiled but pointed, pricked Brenda's skin. She'd heard it kind of before. Whispers that her success was too much, that her place was on a track, not in a home. Kevin overheard, his face tightening, but he stepped forward, voice clear. My mom's the best. She helped me build this. The room stilled and Brenda's chest warmed, her smile a shield against the world's noise. Kevin's project won first place, a blue ribbon pinned to his board. Brenda cheered, her voice rising above the applause, and Kevin ran to her, hugging her tightly. The moment was theirs, a defiance of doubt, a celebration of their bond. Later at home, they celebrated with pizza, Kevin recounting every detail of his win. Brenda listened, her thoughts drifting to a memory from her youth. She'd stood alone on a Memphis track, her first gold medal heavy in her hand, her family absent, their expectations a weight she'd carried alone. Now with Kevin's laughter filling the room, she was no longer alone. She was home. Their weekends were filled with new traditions. Saturdays at the farmer's market became a favorite. Brenda teaching Kevin to pick the ripest peaches, their baskets overflowing with color. They'd sample jams and bread, vendors greeting them by name, their ease a stark contrast to the fear that once defined Kevin's days. One rainy afternoon, they worked on a model rocket in the living room, glue smudging their fingers. Kevin, focused on painting fins, looked up. "Mom, can we launch this at the park?" Brenda's heart skipped at the casual, "Mom," a title she wore with quiet awe. "Absolutely," she said, her voice thick. "We'll light up the sky." Her coaching took root too, the youth track team a mosaic of eager faces. Kevin, clipboard in hand, timed sprints with a seriousness that made Brenda laugh. She guided the kids with the same fire that had carried her to championships, her drills tough but kind. The work grounded her, a way to give back what the track had given her: purpose, strength. Parents watched, some with admiration, others with raised brows, their murmurs echoing old biases. Brenda ignored them, her focus on the kids and Kevin, whose confidence grew with every practice. One evening, as they sat on the porch, the air cool and fragrant, Brenda reflected on their journey. She'd fought for Kevin, for herself, against a world quick to judge. The oak in the park, where Kevin's tears had first caught her eye, stood in her mind, a symbol of their beginning. Now they were here, whole and hopeful. She turned to Kevin, who was sketching a spaceship. "You're going to be a heck of a scientist," she said. He grinned. "And you're the best coach, Mom." The words wrapped around her, a finish line she'd never known she was running toward. Their story closed on a quiet Sunday, back at Piedmont Park. The oak loomed, its branches swaying in a gentle breeze. Brenda and Kevin stood beneath it, a soccer ball at their feet. "Race you to the hill," she challenged, and they ran, laughter trailing like a comet's tail. The park hummed around them, families, joggers, life in motion. But their world was this moment, this joy. Brenda slowed, letting Kevin surge ahead, his shout of victory echoing. She caught up, scooping him into a hug, their breaths mingling in the golden light. As they walked home, hand in hand, Brenda felt a peace deeper than any medal. She'd run for glory, for defiance, but now she ran for love, for Kevin, for the family they'd forged. The oak watched, its roots deep, a guardian of their past and promise of their future. Together they were unstoppable, their steps a rhythm of hope, carrying them toward a tomorrow bright with possibility. Thank you for joining us on Brenda and Kevin's incredible journey of healing and family. We hope their story touched your heart and inspired you to believe in the power of love and resilience. What did you think? Drop a comment below to share your thoughts or tell us how their bond moved you. Your feedback means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that uplift and connect us all. Until next time, keep running toward hope. We'll see you soon.